Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to tell you 11 stories that really happened. Our first story, the ghost of the vending machine. I used to work in a hospital and most of the time I was working night shifts. I went to the vending machine for a snack around 3 a.m. There was a glass door next to the vending machine facing the cafeteria. I clearly saw someone entering through the door. I remembered that there were sensor lights in the cafeteria that turned on when I saw someone in the cafeteria, but they didn't turn on and it was still dark inside. I went to take a closer look and saw people walking inside, walking directly into a wall. I left running. I don't think I've ever run so fast in my life. Our second story, the cradle story. According to a story my mother told me, when I was a baby, one night I was very fussy and my mother came to my crib to check on me. After coming to my room a few times, my mom got tired. When I started crying again, my mom got up to come to my room, but she heard more footsteps and she freaked out because my mom was there alone. When the footsteps stopped, she heard the cradle rocking and the voice of an old woman. This voice was talking to me and trying to calm me down. It's so strange. Our third story, premonition. 1 week before my grandmother died, she started talking to her dead relatives. For example, she would talk to her dead sister by saying, "Okay, Rose. I will be there soon." We realized that she only did this with dead relatives, so it was strange that she started talking to her brother Henry, who was still alive. Or so we thought. After my grandmother's conversation with Henry, we got a phone call that Henry had died. Our fourth story, disappearing nurse. When I was about 6 years old, a very close coworker of my mother, a nurse, passed away. The night my mother's friend passed away, I fell asleep in my mother's bed and woke up when I realized. When I woke up, I saw a woman who seemed to be lying on top of my mother. I had never seen this woman before. She looked at me, smiled, then walked down the hallway and disappeared. A few days after this incident, my mother came back from the funeral and I finally saw a photograph of her coworker. The woman in the photo was the same woman I had seen on my mother that night. Our fifth story, final farewell. One night I woke up at 2 a.m. feeling someone touching my leg. There was no one in the room, so I was very scared, but then I fell asleep. The next morning my mother told me that my grandmother had passed away at 2 a.m. last night. The touch I felt was my grandmother saying goodbye to me. It gives me peace to think like this. Our sixth story, horrific harassment. When I was younger I used to deliver newspapers to a woman named Margie. She was very old and I would take the newspaper and leave it inside for her and check on her. One day I went in and she was asleep in bed, so I went in and put the newspaper on the table and left the house. The next day, Margie was asleep again and the newspaper was still unopened. The next day Margie was awake and hugged me, saying she was very happy. However, the next day after that, there were cars in front of the house. Apparently Margie had died in her bed 3 to 4 days earlier. Somehow I talked to her, and she hugged me when she was actually dead. Our seventh story, haunted pool. I used to work at a public pool and there were times when I worked alone to clean it after it closed. One night, around 2 a.m., I was cleaning the changing rooms. The pool had been closed for a few hours, but I heard a child's laughter and footsteps in the pool. I went out to look, but I didn't see anyone. All the doors were closed and locked. There was no place for a child to hide. I also didn't see any wet footprints by the pool. I checked the doors and the security cameras, but there was nothing. I was the only person in the building. Our 8th story, Holy Spirit. One night I woke up and saw someone who looked like a nun praying next to my bed. I couldn't hear her, but she kept making the sign of the cross on her chest. I was 100% awake and I was very scared. The next morning when I told my mother, she told me that our house was actually built for a priest and that nuns stayed in our house. Our 9th story, the girl in the white dress. One night I got out of bed and started walking to the bathroom with my phone in my hand. I was walking down the hallway and texting at the same time. I bumped into a girl in a white dress, apologized and kept going. When I went to the bathroom, I realized I was home alone. The day after this incident, my boyfriend came to pick me up and asked me, "Why did you change your white dress upstairs?" looking at me. But I don't have a white dress. Our 10th story, chilling incident. After my father died, I went home to visit my mother. I knew I was home alone, but I heard voices upstairs. My father was in his room. He got up from his computer chair, walked to the door, and opened it. After opening the door, he walked down the stairs, stopped for a few seconds on the last step, and then went back to his room and closed the door. I was probably 5 meters away from him, and I froze. My dad was scared of me. Our 11th story, the familiar ghost. I stayed at a friend's house for a while because his roommate was away, so I slept in his room. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by a man in black clothes and a black hat. Then the man came out of the basement door. In the morning of that night, my friend's roommate came back and I asked him about the man in black. He looked at me and said, "Oh, did you see our ghost too?" Thank you for listening. I would appreciate if you follow my channel to listen to more scary and paranormal videos.